Do you guys mind moving up? Just roll yourself forward. Yeah, there you go. Kamal, you're the only man in this room. How does that make you feel? What?
I said, you're here too.
Yeah, but I don't count. Sophia, right?
Yes.
Hello. Remind me of your name again. Alyssa. Kamal, Sebastian, Jessica. In Germa. Okay. Injera? You like Ethiopian food? Yeah.
You?
Oh, my wife is from Ethiopia. Yeah.
You said you're from Iran?
From Iran.
Met in Sacramento?
Hmm?
You met in Sacramento?
Here.
Oh, that's nice.
I wasn't looking. I rammed into her car. And then she got really angry. So I said, let's go have coffee. She said, okay. Hello.
It's a story.
That's how you gotta diffuse the situation, you know. About 30 years ago, I was driving home from a class, and I got pulled over by a cop. Hello. He's going to write me a ticket. So I had just finished, teaching my logic class. So my brain was working, in that particular gear. So after, 5 minutes of back and forth, Dennis was close by. He was done with his shift. We sat. We had some coffee. No ticket was given to me. And then he later signed up for my class. Yeah. Hello.
The gift of gab.
Or something. How are you well? Good, thank you. All of it, right?
Yeah.
What's the gentleman that sits, normally sits next to me? I thought he was Oliver.
Someone sits next to you?
There's a gentleman that always sits next to me.
Old or young?
Oliver.
Oscar.
Oscar. Okay.
What, you like him?
No, I was mixing the names. It's a cool guy.
Yeah. Oliver, how old are you?
19.
Sebastian, you're 18. Kamal, you're 20. And Will, you are?
39.
Sophia, do you mind just moving this way a little bit? I mean, I could just move. There you go. You have siblings?
Yeah.
You like them?
Yeah, most of the time.
One of each?
No, I have a little brother, he's 13.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah. Very.
Hello.
very 13.
He's very 13, huh?
Yes.
Does he smoke?
No.
Watch porn?
Not that I know of.
Well, these days, people start young, like 2, 3,
Hopefully she wouldn't know.
4. Hopefully, you would know. If you found out that he was in fact watching porn at the old age of 13, what would you do?
I would try to not think about it. I would.
Like you wouldn't break his laptop?
No.
Really? You wouldn't call the
I don't
cops?
think he'd want me to know. He would have found out actually.
Nobody wants anybody to know anything that's a little naughty. I mean, ask Jessica.
What?
Well, you had the smirk on your face, so that's like, I'm guilty, but I'm not going to say anything.
What? I'm guilty of what?
Nothing, I mean.
Oh, okay. I'm not-
I mean, you're American. Americans are guilty of nothing, ever.
Okay, all right.
All right, there we go. Okay, let's stop it. Let's move on.
I just feel like breaking a computer over
The what?
I just feel like breaking a computer over finding out this
I walked into my dean's office some time ago, and she was watching porn. And no, I just said, do you mind if I sit next to you and watch together?
How long have you been tenured?
A long time.
Maybe it's because you watch porn with your team.
Dean? Dean, yeah. That's like your boss. Yeah. Well, we've had so many deans over the years, like 50 of them. Hello, Oscar.
Oh wow.
He took his seat.
Well, you asked everybody to scoot up. I didn't want to.
So what are you guys going to talk about? Let's do something boring. Yeah, I'm looking at you.
So, like last week, we were talking about how some people are just like born knowing that they're gonna be like great leaders, like you said about Malcolm X or Jesus even. And I wanted to say, like, do you think that our lives have like a predestined outcome? Like maybe not all our choices, like our choices are supposed to lead up to it, even though they're our choices.
For some of us, it's just pure luck. We really don't know what we are talented in or what we have potential for. And a few components come together, you happen to be at the right place, the right time, and these two forces collide and something wonderful comes out. But that's just once in a while. It's the example I gave some years ago or some time ago about Yannick Noah and Arthur Ashe. That you just had this tiny little black kid in France, he's just playing tennis, with the wall. And all of a sudden this other guy comes in and Yannick doesn't know that Arthur Ashe is the #1 tennis player in the world. And they're just goofing around a little. And all of a sudden, Arthur Ashe comes to realize there is something really special about this little kid. To some extent adopts him, or consider, for example, someone like Mike Tyson. A kid who's angry and violent and just, constantly lives in rage on a daily basis and runs into this old white man, and now that's the true, what we call interracial relationship, that you have a guy who sees potential, another person doesn't really care about the skin color, doesn't really care about religion, none of those things, or even your past, and is willing to spend time and energy. I mean, you need to understand that when you happen to be 50 or 60 or 70, and you find potential in a 15-year-old, that's a huge amount of sacrifice that a 60-year-old man has to make, and you don't really know, it's a shot in the dark, and you don't know where it's going to go. Now imagine for a moment if Mike Tyson had never known this guy, or these two paths never crossed. There's a good chance that Mike would have probably spent most of his life behind bars. Or imagine if Malcolm X had not run into, let's say, someone like Elijah Muhammad, or imagine if someone like Matthew never ran into Jesus Christ, So that's one type of potentiality coming to be realized. The other is, someone like Alex Honnold. I don't know. Hello, Matt. You should watch his interviews. I mean, you may not enjoy climbing very much, but the fact that you have this guy without any protective gear just climbing this flat wall upstream, it's an amazing thing. And he just loved climbing from a very, very young age, and there came a point where his mom said, you know what, I'm going to be a hands-off sort of a parent. He wants to climb trees, fine. He wants to climb the walls, fine. And you realize some people don't really need an exterior force to kind of guide them and make them realize their potential. It's just inborn. And you just wake up and you say, you know what, I love climbing. And you don't know where it comes from. I mean, that's the magic that we were talking about. I think for the rest of us, I think we are just the plumbers and the electricians and the gardeners, and, just regular, normal, typical, useless people that we can be useful if we can connect ourselves to someone with a cause. In other words, right now your life is useless, right? I mean, you probably watch porn, hello, yeah, thank you, hello. You do all sorts of crazy things. But let's say if I was your brother, right, and I had cancer, the guy who did my triple bypass, Dr. Brian Kane. When I asked him, how did you become interested in being a surgeon of sorts? He says, when I was 12, we were having dinner and my father just had a heart attack right in front of me and died. And he loved his father. And he said, you know what, I'm just going to go into this particular field to figure out why people have heart diseases. And so, hello. Some people are just lucky they have talents for something. I think most of us have to run around for a long, long time to figure out what we're good at. There is this great story that comes from one of the traditions of yeah. I'm bored now. So it's about this man, he was very frightened of his own shadow. And so he begins to run really, really fast, to lose his shadow. But the faster he would run, the faster his shadow would follow. And then one day, he was running so fast that his heart couldn't take it. So he had a stroke and died. He finds himself before God in the afterlife. And the man complains, I tried and I tried and I tried, I couldn't. And God looks at him and says, I have planted some trees nearby. All you had to do is find some refuge, in the shade. But you were so focused on running that you didn't see the trees or the shade. And I think most of us are like that. You take this class and you take that class and you go on this date and you go on that date. You flip to the TV channels, and that's the sort of animals that we are. So if you're able to find someone who has a cause and you like that cause and it makes you feel something, it makes you think a certain way, your life gets a little bigger. One of the nice things about mass movements, and I don't know if you've ever been in a mass movement, kind of like the stuff that took place in Oakland, the Occupy Oakland for a few days, and Minneapolis. It happens on a regular basis in the Middle East. But you open your door, you go into the streets, and there are hundreds, if not thousands of people just screaming and shouting. And you join them. And all of a sudden, your life is all of a sudden, your life is very small, insignificant, irrelevant, useless. But all of a sudden, your life gets linked to the life of 1,000 people. And the funny thing about that particular experience is that you guys speak in one voice, one cause, and all of a sudden your life gets bigger. I think I mentioned, when the revolution in 1979 took place, I would run in the streets. Soldiers would come out with machine guns, open fire, no fear. I didn't much care for life. All I cared for was, I'm so happy that I can just fight for something that I really don't really understand. But my life kind of disappeared. As long as you remain with your own cause, you're always going to be in conflict. Is this right? Is that right? What am I doing? Why do I feel so useless? But all of a sudden you get connected to something. There was a story that took place in one of the bridges in New York where this guy was wanting to jump off this bridge to just end his life. And the security guard was passing by, looks at this guy, and he falls. The security guard runs and grabs a hold of his wrist. And they're both slipping. And this young kid looks at this security guard and says, listen, if you don't let go, you're coming down with me. And this guard says, I have a wife, I got 4 kids, but if you go, I go. And it's really interesting that there are moments in our lives where you're more than willing to sacrifice who and what you are and what you have in order to, you connect to something bigger than yourself. So I've forgotten your question, but doesn't matter. Yes, Oliver.
Oh, I actually got a question. Last week we were talking about depression.
Yes.
How when it gets chronic, that it's done. What is the point what do you think the point is where it gets to that? I was curious about that. You elaborate on it.
So I guess you and I are connected to 2 different worlds. The worlds of tables and chairs, getting an F in this class can make you sad. And failing other classes can also make you sad. And your parents find out and they lose their faith in you, their trust in you. All this time they had found you to be somewhat mature, but your GPA proves to them that you're still profoundly immature. And you're condemned by the gaze of your parents. You sit at the dinner table, you want to have a chit chat with them, but you know that they don't really feel good about you and what you've done. And even though they don't really say these things, you feel it. And so in some ways you realize sitting by your parents at the dinner table, it's just not a very pleasant feeling. And you're beginning to sweat, you want to talk, but your voice begins to shake. And you kind of get sad, and sadness turns into depression. Depression turns into sorrow. Sorrow is a thing that now lives inside your soul, and you try to grapple with it. One of the nice things about these moments of sadness and depression is that their shelf life is not very long. They're like milk. 2 weeks later, you're done, and you can just go out and play frisbee with your friends. There's a part of you that needs to be profoundly political. The world is dangerous. And though you may not know this right now, in a few weeks when you move out of your parents' house and you have to pay rent and utilities and car payments, for the first time you'll come to realize the importance of money. But you work at Home Depot or In-N-Out, and in as much as these are great jobs to have, the truth is they're not going to pay the bills. And then you're going to be sad because you dropped out of school a little too early, you moved out of your parents' house a little too early, and you realize most of your concerns have to do with the stuff of everyday life. You fall in love, your heart gets broken, you get cancer, you realize that most of your hopes and dreams are going to be buried with you, they're never going to be realized. That's one kind of depression, okay? That most of us suffer from this kind of depression, that we enter into life with lots of hopes and dreams, and we eventually go to our grave with those hopes and dreams never realized. There was a movie with Al Pacino and Michelle Pfeiffer some years ago. I think it was called Frankie and Johnny. He was just released from prison, works at a coffee shop, The next day, one of the waitresses dies, and Michelle Pfeiffer looks at him and says, "You didn't even know Connie, who passed away, yesterday, and why did you come to her funeral?" And he says, when people go to bed at night, they put their they put their dreams and hopes under this pillow. And then when they wake up, they take out those dreams and they move into life, hoping that they could realize those dreams. So even though I didn't know Connie, I knew that, she, like the rest of us, wakes up with hopes and dreams, and goes to bed knowing that they were not realized. And life is, by far, for the most part, is a very, very disappointing and depressing experience. I don't know. Do you have a girlfriend? Did you ever do a hit and run? You've never done a hit and run. Hit and run. You hit a woman and then you run. Well, let me tell you how that works. So, for those of you novices, here's a lesson. So, you go to a party, right? And you're lonely and pathetic, the way most of us usually are. And you want another human being to look at you. And in the other person's gaze upon you, you feel relevant, significant, importance. Your life all of a sudden becomes meaningful. You mean something, And so you shave, you curl your hair, you put some cologne on, and you go to a party. And let's say across from the room is Jessica. Some girl named Jessica. Not this one, because she's taken. But it doesn't really matter these days anymore. So you look at her, and that's the first thing you need to understand. You keep looking at her, and she keeps looking at you. So two very lonely, desperate people, sad people, all of a sudden, they have purpose. One looks at the other looks at the other. Says, "Wow, hey, I mean something. I'm not that ugly after all." And then you become a political animal. Now, do you know much about relationships? Of course not. Do you know much about sex? Of course not. You don't know anything about anything. All you know is that this instinctual attraction has come about. And then you sit back like a very political animal and say, okay, how do I go to her and say hello? First you begin, smell yourself to see if you smell okay. And then you go to the bathroom real quick to make sure that you look okay. And then you slowly move towards her. And then you drop your phone intentionally. She bends over and she has a mini skirt. Can you guys visualize that? What boring class. So she bends over, picks up the phone and gives it to you. And you say, hello, how you doing? What's going on? Ten minutes later, you're in the back of your bicycle. Going up and down or something. You have your climax. She, of course, your man said. Before she can feel anything, what the hell, you're done. What the hell is this? And then you walk away. That's a hit and run, just in case you didn't know. And then, of course, you see her at the church the following day. You look the other way. Say, I have no idea who you are, You worked so hard for 5 hours to get her attention. You worked so hard for another 5 hours to say hello to her. You worked so hard for another month to get a date. Another 5-6 months of hard work to get into bed. Another 5-6 months, as Henry David Thoreau would say, to suck the marrow out of this relationship. There comes this point where there is no conversation to be had. The sex is no longer as enjoyable. She's no longer as enjoyable. And you walk away. You spend 2 years pursuing this woman or anything. And so that's what life is. One desire after another, and in the end, there is only dissatisfaction. You know, it's like, 4 years of schooling, and then you get a diploma. And you say, well, shit, now what? Now nothing. Another 2-3 years of schooling. And then what? Well, nothing. You get a job. And then what? Well, now you got to grapple with the fact that you're lonely and pathetic and need a companion. Well, then what? Well, the woman is going to look at you and say, I need babies. My body's, eggs are getting old and they're going to expire soon. So come on, let's do it. And that's how it is. One disappointment after another. Are there going to be moments of joy? Absolutely. Will you have fun? Definitely. But for the most part, in retrospection, in reflection, you realize, was it really worth it? The answer is, well, it depends really on the depth of who and what you are. That's one kind of depression, okay? Where you get to be my age, 40, 50, 60, 70, you review your life and you say, man, I've been walking to the classrooms for the past 35 years. Talk. Students are far too busy to care. Even if they care, life really doesn't allow these seeds to go too deep. And you realize your entire life has been amounting to nothing but just yapping on. Okay. This particular examination of life creates this huge space inside you, where you sit back and you say, what do I do now? I mean, for the first 20 years of my life, school occupied the space, then companionship occupied the space, then job and money and house and car and kids and parents and grandparents. Now that they're all gone, what do I do now? And the truth is, one of the most important things that you and I will eventually have to wrestle with is when you realize that something is no longer of any use. It's there, but you no longer need it. And if you don't need it, it doesn't occupy psychological space. And if it doesn't occupy space, it means you have an empty bucket. And now the question is, how do you fill it? Because at this stage, with this understanding, you certainly don't want to fill it with something that will cause disappointment 5 weeks from now. And that's tough. And that could be a cause for disappointment. Then there is another kind of sort of a depression, which is if you're unable to find distraction. Can I do this differently? Any other questions?
What was your thought process behind assigning a conversation with God or examine soul?
Nothing good.
Really?
Yeah,
All those audios.
it's all a shot in the dark. You don't know who's going to listen to them. You don't know what mood they are in while listening. You don't know if they're ready to receive. You don't know if once received, if they can do anything with that. Eventually, ultimately, everything comes down to you writing your essay and getting a grade. It's not going to stick. And if it was to stick, I would feel very sad for you.
Why is that?
What do you mean?
If you got some information or examined your life.
I get the flu.
Stuck.
I'm in bed. All right, so I, call out my wife and say, the king is sick. Make him some soup. And, she's my subject. What can she do but make soup? Massage my feet. Okay. And sure, while in bed, I'm going to have some thoughts about health, about the fact that, my wife has kind of taken a few days off of work and she's attending to me, that I can't really spend much time with the kids, all those things. So I'm going to feel a little guilty. and I'm going to feel as if I've become a burden to them, you know. But it's something that's going to pass. The flip side would be the following. Let's say my sickness is not so much having a flu, but having cancer stage 4. All the thoughts and all the guilt and reviewing my life, it's not just going to be for a minute or two. It's going to occupy almost 90% of me, you know, that I am going to die, that I'm going to leave my wife and my kids behind. How the hell am I going to die? Am I going to die fighting? Am I going to die kind of accepting, you know, my lot in life? One of the things about having cancer and having flu is this. Having cancer is you're never going to be left alone by this disease. It's always going to follow you like a shadow. And the prospect of you no longer being here, if you're not trained to think that way and to feel that particular path, it's going to be devastating. You're going to be mean, you're going to be angry, because remember, you're dealing, I mean, depression ultimately has to do with loss. I'm not just going to wake up and just be sad. I'll have a mood that's negative. And moods, by their very nature, they come from nowhere and they're going to disappear to nowhere. Okay? Feelings are very, very different. Feelings is that you come to this class and I just crap all over you. And you're going to just feel bad from 9 to 10, 15. But that feeling is going to go away. If, on the other hand, this class would make you feel bad, and the next class would make you feel bad, and the following class would make you feel bad, then you go to work and that would also make you feel bad. What you have is a day. That day has events. Those events create a history of that day. Every single aspect of that history of Tuesday morning to Tuesday night has been negative. Now you go home with a good amount of anger inside you, and anger is always historical. Always. In other words, anger has history to it. Feelings does as well, but feelings, the history or the roots of feelings are very, very like short, okay? Moods, they come and go. Okay? Cancer, it has roots in places you don't even know and are aware of, which means that for the most part, you're not going to be fun. If you were to take the phrase by Socrates, the unexamined life is not worth living. Well, go home and try to examine every aspect of your life. And I will assure you, your husband, if you have one, he will leave you. He can't tolerate too much of the stuff. You look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself how your time is being spent on a daily basis. You won't be able to tolerate it. Your kids, by the time these kids gain some maturity, you and I will probably be dead. But while alive, you have to tolerate their bullshit. Are you going to tolerate it? The answer is no. You know. And so we are very lucky and fortunate that we listen to these audios, we read these books, we watch the news, and nothing penetrates. Nothing sticks for too long. You know, and after a few weeks, or a few days, or a few minutes, we can go back to life. You know, have you ever heard of this man named Gilgamesh? Gilgamesh? It's the first story given to us human beings, and language came about maybe 3,000-4,000 years ago in Egypt. First cuneiforms, this wet clay, you draw some lines, you put them in the sun, they dry. Then you add some pictures, and of course you create alphabets. And so, the first story that was ever written. Prior to this period, what you have is an oral tradition. It's kind of like this. You don't take notes because you don't know how to write. And you can't read books because, again, you don't know how to read. There are no alphabets. What you have is an oral culture. Someone like me comes to class and talks. You sit there. And there is only one function in the oral tradition, the storytelling tradition, which is it's supposed to remind you of the things that live inside you but have been forgotten because of everyday interaction with the tables and chairs of life. My job as a storyteller is to give you wings. So for the 2 hours that you're in this class, imagine this like 4,000 years ago, you grow wings and you fly away up there and you see the sun, you know, and you get warmed up a little bit, and you say, man, this is a different here. I didn't know such a thing exists. You know, and there is no competition amongst the groups, and nobody really wants to be the next Messiah. It doesn't work that way in the ancient culture, unlike today, where everybody wants to be Jesus Christ or Steve Jobs. And so that was the function of stories. You know, there was a language, alphabet A and alphabet B. One language only designed for the tables and chairs of life. Another were designed for your soul. And these two worlds will never come together. You know. And so one of the nice things about the Epic of Gilgamesh, for those of you in this class who are interested in these ideas, is that you have a guy who is very, very attractive, and he gets drunk off of that. Lesson number one, power gets you drunk. It doesn't matter if it's physical power like Brad Pitt or Donald Trump. It makes no difference. And it takes you a long time to sober up. But here's the thing you need to understand in trying to become sober. The gods up there must like you, Tia. If the gods up there don't favor you, you're going to remain drunk. You're going to be as cunning, as clever, as corrupt, as brutal as you've always been. When drunk, people will complain about you. Because when you're drunk, you're just stupid. And your stupidity gets imposed on other people. The gods send someone into your life. And here's the third lesson. Transformation. There's only one way. You gotta fall in love with the person that the gods have sent into your life. Love is not an intellectual practice, it's emotional. In other words, the person that you fall in love with, they become your sun, and you're the earth. You revolve around them. Now, here's the thing you need to know about love. You can either love someone's flesh, not difficult to do, because lots of people have interesting and exciting fleshes to look at. You can fall in love with someone's emotions. Examine people who have been depressed. You realize when they have conversations, they usually have conversations with people who are equally depressed like them. They share the same stories, they share the same language, same emotions. Okay. You can fall in love with someone's intellect. You know, it's like, you know, you listen to Noam Chomsky. Well, he's read a lot of books about the Middle East. He's read a lot of books about politics. So, you know, when he sits and talks, you say, man, I didn't know about this stuff at all. Okay. Or you can fall in love with someone's soul. And that is tough. Because if you fall in love with someone's soul, they're not going to care much about your physical body. They're not going to much care about your pathetic emotions, where you want to talk about your dad or your mom or your boyfriend, your girlfriend. They don't give a shit about those things. They don't even care about how much knowledge you have in your pathetic little skull. Which means that should you fall in love with someone's soul, as Gilgamesh did some 5,000 years ago, fell in love with Enkidu. Here's the thing about Enkidu. Enkidu lives in the forest. In the ancient tradition, forest is always a place of innocence and purity. City is always a place of contamination and corruption. Now you want to hang out with Malcolm X. He doesn't care about your money. He wants to see whether or not you enjoy his cause. And for you to enjoy his cause, you can either just hang out with him physically, around him, which is okay, not bad. Or you could simply listen to what he has to say with the ears of your skull. That's not bad either, you know. Or once in a while you can have moments of inspiration. The other is, he gets you pregnant with his cause. Now, you can abort any pregnancy up to a certain moment. There comes a point where just in case you want to abort, you got to deal with certain emotions. Are you not ready for it? It doesn't matter if you have no money. It doesn't matter if you're single. It doesn't matter whatever. You're just gonna go ahead with the pregnancy. There comes a point that Gilgamesh falls in love with Enkidu. Here's the thing now you need to know about love. Love is unequal. In every relationship, one person will always have more power. Always. Always. Which means that just in case you're not in a relationship, and just in case I love you more than you love me, and just in case we cut this relationship, I will suffer more than you. Why? I love you more. And in you having more power, I have no choice but to submit more, surrender more, do more. Okay. Now here's the thing. When Gilgamesh falls in love with Enkidu, Enkidu doesn't say, let's go buy a house. He doesn't care about a house. Enkidu is after, I suppose, purity or justice or fairness. And even though Gilgamesh has no idea what those things mean, because he has fallen in love with Enkidu, he begins to study. Then something amazing happens. Enkidu dies. And that's the ultimate sacrifice that the gods have to make. Fall in love with a Malcolm X. He becomes the air you breathe. Then Malcolm X is going to die. But Malcolm X, the physical body, will die, but lives inside you. But here's the thing. You can't go back to your regular life. It doesn't work that way. You've been touched by something. You can't describe it, you can't explain it, but you've been touched. And that's devastating because now you got to do this on your own. You got to generate the Malcolm X that lives inside you. And that's what Enkidu does. 5,000 years ago. This is before Hinduism, Buddhism, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. It's an amazing thing. That 5,000 years ago, and we're talking about oral tradition, which means that the Epic of Gilgamesh was handed down from one tradition to another through language. You know, up to date, we only have about maybe 25 tablets, and as the years go by, and as anthropologists go here and there, they discover more tablets, more elements get added to the story. And you realize that you're very lucky that you only have a tiny glimpse of Socrates, and then Socrates gets reduced to simply an essay. And then 2 weeks later, you completely forget who Socrates was, what he talked about. It saves your life. You can go back to your life and enjoy your husband, enjoy TV shows, enjoy coming to classes, enjoy having conversations. Imagine if the soul of Socrates was now to be living inside you. What would that do to your life? It's like cancer. It's not going to leave you alone. So when you ask, what's the function of these audios? The truth is nothing. As an instructor, I'm obligated to put some things on the modules for you guys to kind of listen to them, rather than essay so I can give you a grade. No other intention.
Good ideas.
It's fucked up, I know. Anyone else? With anything? Before I tell you another story?
Sure.
Jeremy.
I was reading the book by Carlos Castaneda called The Art of Dreaming.
Right.
And in the book, he details his trials and tribulations with Don Juan, basically him running into the dream world, quote unquote. I did kind of develop a fascination with this book and applied it to breathing techniques, past life and stuff like that. Does that add any credibility to what I've learned, given the fact that what he's writing is kind of like an anthropological fiction? It's based on his teachings from Don Juan, or is it like I'm piecing stuff together and kind of making stuff?
Did you guys like ask easy questions? A couple of things. Jeremy, right? We are flawed animals in the sense that there is this element of discontent and meaninglessness that lives inside us. And we're always like traveling towards some destination to find meaning. You know, some people find it, I don't know, by playing sports. You find it by reading books. I do it by coming to class. You know, Mother Teresa does it by going to India at the age of 15 and helping people. So number one is that we're all looking for something. We just don't know what it is. Some people are fascinated and gravitate towards someone like Castaneda, and other finds his or her joy by watching Kobe Bryant play, okay, when he was alive. That's number one. Number two, when you read Carlos Castaneda, there are a couple of things you need to keep in mind. Do you ever feel like finding your roots? Why? So there is a reason as to why all of a sudden you wake up one morning and you say, you know what? I want to like figure out what my roots are or where my roots are, right? It means the following. It means that you wake up one morning, you look at yourself in the mirror, you look at your life, why or how that happens. Maybe it's something you've been practicing or it's just a mood swing of sorts. But what that indicates is that what you have planned for the day and what you did yesterday doesn't really generate too much meaning for you. You want to like be linked to something that has roots, that has meaning, that has depth. Okay? That also means that the culture and tradition in which you live has not nourished you the way you want to be nourished. Okay? That's number one. Which means that there's a good amount of poverty that lives inside you. If not, as a professional human being who thinks about this all the time, at least that mood that comes up creates that for you for a few minutes or a few days. The difference between you and me and Carlos Castaneda is the following. Don Juan belongs to a living tradition, not books, a living tradition. Unlike you and I, Don Juan is a teacher that guides Castaneda. It's not books. Now, could it be that as you're reading a book, you could have a revelation of sorts, an opening of sorts that can transform you? Things can happen. If I was to tell you a story, I would say the following. About 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago, kind of like this class, you know, all these Persians are sitting, we're having dinner and religious and political conversation. All of a sudden, this woman stands up and says, you guys need to shut up. And I don't know if you know anything about the Persian culture. We are very, very, very conservative. Women talk to women, women sit next to women, and men do what they do, which is nothing usually. And there are all these people, doctors and surgeons, you know, and this woman all of a sudden stands up and says, the rest of us need to be quiet. And then she passes out. And then she comes to. And then she begins to speak German. And then she passes out. And then she begins to talk Arabic. These are languages that she didn't know, but all of a sudden. Hello. So in the Middle Eastern tradition, you know what we call these people, Jeremy? We call them snatched. Snatched. You know, it's like you're walking around the lake and someone comes and just bangs your head with a baseball bat. Thousands of people out there, but they chose you. Snatched. That we don't know why, we don't know how. And these people don't really need teachers. They don't need to be religious. They don't need to be reflective at all. But something about them is just open. And I don't know how that happens, you know. And she ends up in a hospital for 2 weeks. And the way this country works, when you realize that I don't know, your brain chemistry has changed a little. They want to medicate you. But thank God her husband came forth and said, no, we are Persians. I don't think you guys understand who and what we are. He takes her home. 2 weeks later, she's fine. So there are some people that are categorized as snatched. No teachers are needed. No books need to be read. No thoughts need to be thought of. Okay. Now you may be of that category. I don't really know. Now, without a teacher, this could happen to you. Jeremy, you ready? You're going to read a few more books. Your imagination is going to reinforce the sort of vision that you have about yourself. Your ego is going to be inflated. You're going to think very highly of yourself. You're going to isolate yourself. You're going to pick and choose very, very carefully. This power that's supposed to save you, humble you, make you more pure and innocent in many ways, now makes you profoundly arrogant. Now, there is nothing wrong with being arrogant, and there is nothing wrong with being selective. If you've been trained well, you know. The only thing that you have right now, Jeremy, is a book. It's 90% dangerous, 10% beneficial. Will the book give you a different aspect of yourself? Absolutely. Will it help you? In some ways. Will it hurt you? In many ways, yes. Hello. One of the problems with these experiences, Jeremy, is that it makes the rest of life look and feel very, very pale. If you continue to read Castaneda, you're going to drop out of school. You're going to find people like me stupid and useless. And you may get in your van and travel to Yosemite and stay there. And you may find a hippie very much like yourself. But then you get to be 35, 40. And you realize living in a van is not sufficient. Now, it may be fine for you. I don't really know. But if I was your brother, I would say the following. If you want your soul not to be contaminated, make sure you have physical power. Make sure you're healthy. Make sure you have money. Make sure you're done with school. Hello, Ginning. How are you? It's good to see you. Classes are good. Ginning teaches humanities and philosophy at Shabelle and Dianza College. She's a brand new mother. It's good to see you. Saeed is good. Kimia. Jeremy, are you listening? How old are you? You're old, man. Jeremy, finish school. It doesn't matter how you do it. And not just a bachelor's. I'm not talking about just a BA. And not an A. A is useless. You finish Laney, and you apply to Stanford, Yale, Princeton, East Bay, San Francisco. If you're very creative, you want to do, I don't know, social sciences, humanities, philosophy, religious studies, fine. You know, get your master's. If you can, get your PhD. If you do things the right way, by the time you're 30, you're done. But if you keep reading Castaneda at the wrong time and approaching it for the wrong reasons, you'll be 30 and you'll still be at Laney College. Don't be stupid. Finish school. Make money. Buy yourself a nice little land. Pay it off as quickly as you can so the government has no power to take it away from you. or getting evicted by a landlord. Save money. Anyways, you have Audible? Well, download all of Castaneda's books. There are 50 of them. And while you're sitting in your classes, make sure the instructors don't see. Just have like an earphone and, just listen and pretend that you're paying attention to your instructor. And plagiarize the essays that you have to write for the classes. What? Because most of the important things that you have to learn, you won't get them in classrooms. So anyone else with any interesting questions before I... Sure.
Yeah. I'm about to think about for a few years. Do you think that our ability to think and communicate and extrapolate that thinking and communication through technology, whether it's written language or current computers, whatever, has it outstripped our own biology?
I can't claim to have understood the question properly. A couple of things. I think when asking questions, myself included, I think most often there are things inside us that bother us, we are curious about. We just don't know how to put those curiosities and the emotions linked to those curiosities into a language that's coherent, for us even. If I was to ask you to go home and write that question down, it'll probably take you a couple of days, if not weeks, to kind of figure out exactly what it is that you're talking about, So that's number one. Most often we don't even know what we're asking. All we know is that something is not settled inside us. There is something about technology we're thinking about. There's something about understanding and wisdom and information. They're all just mismanaged and not so harmonious. There was a guy some years ago. He died in the 1940s, I think, or 50s. Some of you may have heard his name. I know Ginning has. He was this Jeremy. His name is G.I. Gurdjieff. Have you heard of him? Well, check him out. On Audible. Yeah. So Gurdjieff had this idea when he came to, I'm just going to project my own stuff on your questions because that's how I understand it. So you read a lot of books about a lot of different things. Let me do it differently. There was a guy some years ago by the name of Aldous Huxley. Huxley was one of the guys who did psychedelics, and he had this wonderful experience. And even though his life was profoundly profound, through the assistance of psychedelics, it became even more profound. Okay. And he had one of those minds, it was like soaking information and knowledge, from wherever he could find. He fell into this state of depression. I know a lot of things, I just can't feel what I know. Your feet, your arms, your eyes, your ears, they're all helping you to move towards the book, another lecture, another workshop. You get more information, and there are moments of inspiration. What you lack is when the Buddha says all of life is suffering, You can go to a classroom and you can talk about it endlessly for hours. But then you go home and you say, I want to know what that means. Not just suffering because I have a bellyache, or not suffering just because I'm hungry, or my wife left me, or my kid is sick. All of life is suffering. What the hell does that mean? All of life is suffering. So much so that all the desires just die inside you. That you're not pulled towards anything. Your kids don't inspire you. Your companion doesn't inspire you. Books don't inspire you. Ideas don't inspire you. You don't inspire you. I mean, that's a whole lot of suffering. You say, is there something wrong with me? Or is there something wrong with the Buddha? Because I understand what suffering is, but it seems like he has not only the knowledge of it, but also the soul of it, what it means and how it feels, and what it does. Because when you say life is suffering, you remove happiness. You remove desires. You remove hope. You remove dreams. And what is a human being without hopes and dreams? It makes no sense. And yet the Buddha felt it. And the Buddha lived it. And even strangely enough, thousands of people follow him. His bleak, gloomy, pessimistic philosophy of life. Why? Because it's not just what he says. There is something about the Buddha that embodies suffering. You look at me, just look at me, and by mere glance, hope will wither inside you. You will want something else. So what Gurdjieff was talking about is that there is this imbalance between being, embodying something, and mere understanding. There was a movie with Mel Gibson some years ago. I think it was called The Edge of Darkness or The Edge of Night or something, where his daughter is murdered by this company who's doing some naughty things behind closed doors. And he goes and talks to the CEO of the company, who is single, he's not a parent, and Mel Gibson is sitting on the sofa, and he's sitting behind his desk, and he looks at Mel Gibson, the father who just lost his 25-year-old daughter, and says to him, how does it feel? You know, the pain that you're going through, how does it feel? And it's very telling that how does it feel to be a Jesus Christ from 2,000 years ago? You know, how does it feel to be a Socrates and being a gadfly running around forcing people to ask difficult questions? How does it feel to be a black person or a person of color walking into the Lucky's at Montclair where everybody's white? How does it feel? And what you're saying is, I want to put myself in your shoes and I want to experience an ounce of feeling. How does it feel to be a mother giving labor? How does it feel to be a parent having concerns for your kids? You know, and if your question is, you have a good amount of understanding, but you lack the feeling or you lack embodying the understanding, how do I get that? How do you create this balance? Right now here at Laney, I have a colleague who recently lost a parent, you know, and the truth is, you know, as Kierkegaard would say, that the moment you're born, you're old enough to die, you know. And I would add that the moment that you're born, you're going to be orphaned. You know, there comes a point where you realize that no one can reach you and you have no one. And most of us in this class, if you've ever suffered any pain, any disappointment, you realize language is far too fragile and far too limited. And you have to kind of just sit in your room, turn off the lights, pull down the blinds, and just figure out what the hell is going on with you. You know, how do you wrestle with the sadness and the depression and the loss and the grief? Now, here's the thing when you suffer a loss. I mean, you and I work so hard in having power over our pathetic little lives. You know, I'm on this diet, I walk every day, my wife is there, my kids are there. And the moment I realize that my wife is losing interest in me, I buy flowers, I take her to a trip. The moment I realize that my kids are no longer talking to me, we go to Disneyland, for example, we go to a park, we play soccer, and we talk a little bit. So these are the measures I take in making sure my life doesn't fall apart. Then comes this devastation. Your father dies. I mean, you think you're ready for it. I mean, that's one of the things about death, you know. I have cancer, I gradually die, but in my gradual traveling towards my death, my kids eventually get ready. Dad is sick. When is he going to die? I pray that he dies fast. This is far too burdensome. And then there is a sudden aspect of death. I promise to make pancakes for the kids. They knock on the door. There's no answer. They open the door. They walk into the room. They realize my skin color is a little pale. Dad, wake up. I'm unmoved. I'm dead. That's a shock. Okay. Now, one of the things about loss and grief of this magnitude is that the rug is pulled from under your feet. You have no ground to stand on. You have no idea what just happened to you. You want to go back to school, but you find school to be stupid. You want to go back to books, but no book answers, or nothing is relatable. And you're isolated and you feel alienated. And you don't really know where to go, what to do with yourself. You know, it's kind of like going back to the first book of the 5 stages of the soul. You kind of just feel restless. And you feel as if life has damaged you profoundly. You thought you had read enough books to deal with death. You thought that you have reflected, enough of your time on death. And then death happens. And you realize, man, you're a novice. You're not even, you're below that. And if someone was to stick with that, I mean, one of the best teachers, grief, that despite your immense desire to control life, you have so little control. And the idea that shit happens, so true. And when then shit happens, you begin to smell like shit, and there are no showers. And there are no towels. Now here's the thing that's going to happen. In about 2-3 weeks' time, the episode will be forgotten. To whatever extent your soul was burdened by the experience of death, it gets distracted, demolished by coming to class and giving a talk, going to your office and writing, chit-chatting with your friends, cooking, gardening, and this and that. And all of a sudden, the thing that used to burden you, it's no longer there. Once again, it just becomes a theory, a concept. Going back to Jeremy and, of course, your question, how do you embody the thing that you have knowledge of? You need a teacher who will continue to push you until the thing like cancer begins to live inside you and grows bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. If you get to that particular place, the thing inside you that's growing, it'll teach you what you need to learn. And then what you have is a balance. Now, here's the thing. If you happen to be like Carlos Castaneda, you will not desire to participate in the politics of life. You will go underground. You will speak selectively. In other words, life will serve little use to you. You will choose your people very, 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 very carefully, And that's something that happens to all of us in this class, for those of you who may not know. When you're young and ridiculous, almost every person out there is dateable. When you get a little older and you're less ridiculous, you realize out of 50 people out there, you only have 2 options. And out of 2, only 1 will work. And that one requires like 50 years of wrestling for ultimately peace to enter the relationship. Just in case we get similar questions, remainder of the semester, let me say a couple of things. I come from a tradition where I myself had a teacher for about 10 years, and going back to my comments to Tia, I fell in love with my own teacher for about 10 years, and he became a family friend for about 30 years, then he died of cancer a couple of years ago. His name was Hussein. And the relationship is interesting, and this is how usually it takes place. Number one, your history, for the most part, needs to be clean. Now, it doesn't mean that just in case you have a broken history, things are not going to work out for you. It just means that it's going to take more work on your part and your teacher's part, you know. So, no addiction. The only thing I didn't like doing was going to school. I hated school. There comes a point where, and we would go to his house 3 times a week, and each time lasted from 5 in the afternoon all the way to sometimes 3, 4 in the morning. You couldn't talk, you couldn't feel, you couldn't think. And just in case the feelings were intense, you had to keep them private. And there were only 3 of us. Okay. A lot of people came and a lot of people left. And so sometimes when I speak about teachers and students, you need to understand that there's a good amount of bias inside me, and that bias is there because of my own experience. I don't know any other way that this path towards philosophical understanding and then embodying that understanding can come about except through having a teacher-student relationship. You know, so someone who does like psychedelics and all of a sudden has this grand opening and their life is transformed, in my worldview, in as much as it can be a profoundly liberating experience, it can damage you for the rest of your life. It's like, you know, love is a great thing, but if you experience it at the age of 11, and at the age of like 15 or 18 or 20, and you get broken at the age of 25, you know, that's going to leave this gloomy mark inside your soul. And every relationship that's out there to happen for you, you're going to trust it less. You're going to have faith in it less. You're going to walk in it with a great amount of doubt. You know, the task of a teacher is there to protect you. And, you know, the reason I tell Jeremy to go to school, listen, I'm an immigrant. I know what it means to be 18. I know what it means to come to classes and realize that, you know, school it sucks and it doesn't nourish you. It doesn't do anything for you. You know, I've also lived in the streets. I've also been a janitor. I've also done a good amount of dishwashing. I've done a lot of crummy things in my life. Now, does school, is that going to be the answer for him? No. But what I do know is that if you have physical stability, that's one less thing that you have to be concerned about. If you have money in your pocket, well, shit, you don't think about rent. You have it. You know, and if you want to have a healthy relationship, you don't want to sit with your companion and talk about not having enough money every goddamn week. It's going to ruin the relationship. You know, and it's something we should talk about perhaps on Thursday, which is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You know, and you need to go through steps. You know, it's like alphabets. You don't always then go to your mom and say, well, let me write a sentence. Well, shit, learn the ABCs first. And then put the letters together. You know, create a word, then create a sentence, then write a paragraph. Then maybe you can write your own book. But to one morning getting up and saying, Mom, I demand that I write a book. Well, that's stupid. You know. You guys make me upset. What time is it?
14 after.
Oh, we have a minute. Let's do a quickie. Any quickie questions? Yeah. What was your name?
Eddie.
Eddie? Eddie. Heriberto.
Yeah.
Okay.
Quick question to classify. When is the clock?
Well,
Did you take off the clock?
I am the clock. Did I take off the clock? Yeah, to take it home. Am I a thief? Yeah.
Good.
Have a nice day.